Hello.
Hello.
My name is Bill Humber, and I am the director of the Office of Eco-Seneca Initiatives. And welcome to the third season of our Green Citizen video campaign as part of the Green Citizenship program at Seneca College. I'm very pleased today to have with me Dr. Kay-Ann Williams. Kay-Ann is a social geographer. She has her doctorate from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. But ironically, we're going to go back to her starting point academically and work-wise in Kingston, Jamaica. Kay-Ann, take us a little bit through the early years of your life and perhaps what brought you to Canada.
Okay. Hi, Bill.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, so, yes, I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and I grew up in Kingston, and basically what's called a suburb, I suppose, in Portmore for the other stage of my life. And I went through prep school, high school, and then university in Jamaica, University of the West Indies, Mona campus, that's in Kingston as well. And there I decided to study geography, and I got my degree, my BA in geography. And then I had my first job, which was in at Mines and Geology Division in Kingston as well, in Jamaica.
What kind of work did you do with in the geology area with mines and geology?
Oh, well, Mines and Geology is a very small department, but it carries out great responsibilities and a lot of work, a part of which is geological surveys.
Right.
But I was involved with the team that does the inspection of quarries, sand and gravel and limestone quarries in Jamaica, and be a part of the team that deals with the licensing, you know, having the various quarry operators become licensed and registered and follow the procedures that are outlined in the contract, basically.
Now, there must be a significant environmental component or impact to that kind of industry. What are some of the challenges you face in licensing and an aggregate industry?
Well, I think in most industries, well, all industries that deal with the extraction of natural resources from our land, right? There is a lot of consequences that can come, environmental consequences that can come from that, right? So,
Such as?
So we're taking away. The most obvious in an island setting is what people would consider as scarification, you know, taking away from the beauty of the natural space, right? And then, of course, other issues with sand quarries would be, you know, if it's not done properly and leaving holes, it can be unsafe whenever you do have lots of rainfall and there's like pooling of water, you know, people can probably drown or something, or issues surrounding flooding of adjacent properties. With limestone quarries, there is also the issue of taking away, it's like deforestation, taking away your trees, and of course issues with erosion, especially if there isn't a plan of repurposing the area afterwards, right? And in the setting, in a setting of a small island with a small economy, the unique issue would be the fact that the small economy, the extraction would be slower, right? Because it's a supply and demand issue, and the supply is there, the demand may be staggering, like it staggers, and so, you know, it would seem as if for a very long period of time an area is just looking devastated, right? And so that would be like one of the unique challenges for small economies like a small island like Jamaica. Well, yeah.
Now, the bauxite industry is a big industry, is it not, in Jamaica? And what are the particular challenges that industry creates?
Well, for that industry, once again, it has a lot to do with how we deal with waste. You know, all of the waste from the mining operation, but more so from the industrial processing aspects of the mud lakes that we have in Jamaica. Monitoring that for leaching and contaminants in groundwater. And then on the other hand of it, the social issues of course, you know, extracting the material from people's private property, right? And the issues surrounding having land ownership, landowners being able to either return to their property or that negotiation of, you know, being, you know, placed somewhere else. So there's a big negotiation issue when it comes to those things. And the issue about environmental matters cannot only be like the physical environment. We have to also think about the people who live in their environments, their livelihood, and the social situation. So the bauxite industry in Jamaica has been quite advanced, you know, but if we're going to talk about like the particular issues that they may face constantly, it would really be one of those negotiations, you know, with communities and so on. And we have been able to, you know, where safety is concerned, to remain a safe industry. And over the years, the expectations have been, you know, solidified and met. And so that type of trust is not really problematic as it could be in some circumstances.
Now, you went on to pursue further education. You went on to get your master's. Tell us a little bit about that process. And it was outside of Jamaica, in Stockholm, I understand. What made you look to do a master's in Stockholm?
Believe it or not. It was free.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that's always the best education.
That's always the best.
Yeah, so you had an opportunity to study there then.
I did, right? An opportunity came up. In the sense that while at Mines and Geology Division, you got the great opportunities for professional development. So I went to Sweden before to do a program in mining technology. And so I met people there, and through that network, I was able to just ask around in terms of when I was ready to contemplate doing my master's, if what would be a good institution that I could apply to. But then the bonus was that, you know, there was no fee for application. I don't know if it's like this anymore, but back then, there was no fee for application, and there's no tuition fee if you get accepted, even for people living outside of the country. So turns out I got accepted, and I went there, and it was a good experience, very enlightening. My research was basically doing a comparison in the quarry operations in Sweden, well, parts of more like surrounding areas of Stockholm, and our practices in Jamaica.
And what similarities and what differences did you find between them?
Well, I tried to focus mostly on the ideas around restoration or repurposing. And of course learned that restoration, not quite, you know, like it's almost, I would suggest, impossible. But when it comes to planning for repurposing areas, it's really good to recognize the context of the economy, right? So in the situation of Sweden, there, you know, the supply and demand issues are much stronger in terms of the amount of material that is extracted and in the period of time. And so they can have a plan to have an area repurposed. The turnover time is much, much quicker than in a smaller economy such as Jamaica. And so we would have smaller spaces that are affected, but a longer times of it being affected, right? So
it would appear to be a devastated site for a longer
for a longer period of
Yes.
time. But it's
Yeah.
really simply because of a small economy.
Sure.
And in understanding that will help, I think, in knowing how to proceed. Another thing is you think about it in terms of repurposing instead of restoring.
Right.
So, like for example, I saw examples of quarries that were now outdoor concert
Right.
arenas.
Yeah.
You know, because of the acoustics that you could get with the
So they
the
didn't
material.
go back to what they once were. They became something
They
new.
became something new that
Right.
was useful
Wow.
to the community
Yes.
as well,
Yeah.
and so on, you know. And that was quite fascinating for me and
Right.
interesting, that I wanted to see how that could
Sure.
be somewhat useful when we
Yeah.
return to Jamaica. Yeah.
Well, we have a famous quarry in St. Mary's, Ontario, in Ontario, that is now a gigantic swimming hole.
Yeah.
And it was a very famous spot because Pierre Trudeau, the Prime Minister, way back in the late 60s, actually dove into that swimming pool quarry.
Yeah.
So there was a repurposing for a different use than what was there originally.
Yeah.
But talking about something like that, and in this case, concerts or swimming holes, you at one time worked in the tourism industry as well in Jamaica. Could
Speaking
you-
of entertainment.
Yeah, well, because that's obviously a part of it. What was that work entail?
Well, I
what was that
continued
story about?
along the theme of
Right.
geography, sustainability, environmental conservation. In the tourist industry, I was working as an environment, health, and safety manager at
Right.
a hotel there. And that was engaging in another way. So while at Mizan Geology, I had the great chance of learning about the entire island because you're going from one quarry to the next. At the hotel, you're basically at that one place, but it's huge with so many different activities. And as
Right.
environment, health, and safety manager,
Yeah.
you're involved in everything. Anybody who is involved in environmental conservation is involved in every aspect, right?
Right.
Economic, social,
Right.
and so on. So for that job, it was very engaging, very exciting, and something that you're involved in almost every day for the week. A big part of it was to try and implement and maintain conservation efforts throughout the hotel.
Because people
And-
come to Jamaica not just for the climate, but obviously for the surroundings and the environment itself.
Yes, and at the same time, hotels in Jamaica have been making relationships or having relationships with various organizations that have standardizations.
Right.
So they're becoming members of these
Right.
organizations, and they have to also try and meet the criteria each year.
Right.
And it's a very good, it's a selling point, you know, it helps with
Sure.
building the business.
Yeah.
And then B, it also, of course, you get the reward from conserving, you're saving money.
Right.
And then, of course, you're also adding value to your community and
Right.
the future of our resources. So there's so many pluses to it, right? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say one of the attractive features of going to Jamaica would be the chance to walk the beaches, swim in the water.
Yeah.
Scuba diving must be popular. Are there particular challenges around, the quality of the water, the coral reefs, that sort of thing? What are some of the kind of the big issues that Jamaica wrestles with on a regular basis around some of those issues of water quality and particularly the coral reefs?
Well, for sure, especially once again, there are so many ways to look at
Right,
it, right?
sure.
Like with countries in the Caribbean, especially that are dependent on tourism.
Right.
And corals, scuba diving, having a healthy coral reef, you'll actually have more visitors come
Right.
along. Of course, coral reefs have their great benefits as well as like breakers for tides and so on, and habitats for
Right.
various sea life.
Right.
But the challenge that we tend to be facing now is one because of global warming and just a slight shift in temperature
Yes.
of our ocean seas is actually you're seeing the effects on the corals with coral bleaching.
Right.
The additional issue is with hurricanes.
Right.
And hurricanes tend to also break the corals, and so you'll also have the devastation of corals in that
Right.
way. And if we keep having more intense storms very quickly, the corals don't get a chance to regenerate, right?
Right.
So, so that's one of the major issues when it comes to like being unique to the Caribbean and our surrounding seas.
Right.
In terms of pollution, for sure, there are issues as well, because in many circumstances, historically, you know, we don't really deal with our waste as efficiently as we should.
Right. Nobody does.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
And and also you have the issue of maybe not being able to maintain the systems that we have that are in place.
Right.
This is I would say most countries that are once again small economies or developing countries, the issues around lack of enough income to be able to keep that being maintained. So when it comes to pollution, yes, you have those issues. Then with deforestation and heavy rainfall, you have the problems as well with runoff and a lot of runoff from deforested hillsides out into the oceans, or so. Those are really tricky situations, especially because of how it can affect us economically as well. And it's something that we have worked on. I know that we've had an organization, an institution in Jamaica that was working on having protecting the reefs by trying to start installing, what do you call it again? Not the natural ones. What are they called?
Kind of like an artificial
artificial reefs,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And we were. When I was at the hotel as well, we engaged with that institution to try and start working on that as well. So there are things where we're conscious of, and we would like to have them things to kind of like mitigate or adapt probably to the situation. But when it comes to global warming, it's one of those things that it's not only within your control, right? So it's one of those really long-term things to deal with.
So you have to try to mitigate as well and remediate. That's a big challenge.
At the same time.
So you decided to pursue your next level of education in Canada. What was the driving force that brought you to Canada, and what took you to Kingston, Ontario, to Queen's University to complete your doctorate there?
Good question.
Okay.
No, why did I come to Canada? I've found, just like many Jamaicans, many people on the island who migrate, I migrated.
Right.
I came to Canada and I settled in Toronto, as many immigrants will do, and as a big city with great opportunities and so on. And eventually, within a year of being here, being an immigrant, there are many things about being an immigrant that makes you, that affects you in terms of how you will sit back and rethink. It's almost like you're starting over. You always hear a person saying you're starting from scratch.
Right.
And starting from scratch, I thought to myself, what did I think that I would like to do prior to even migrating to Canada? And I know I thought that I would enjoy teaching.
Right.
I know I thought I would enjoy being in a university setting.
Right.
And I found myself thinking, okay, I want to go and do my PhD, get myself in that space where I can find myself eventually becoming a professor and imparting knowledge and so on and so forth. And in my quest and in my research, I found that I had a professor at Queen's who was interested in what I wanted to do research in, and that's how I got there. Because of course, within that first year, I wasn't really sure which places to go, but you know, I found myself at Queen's based on the fact that a professor was there interested in the topic I was interested in. And it was a good experience as well. It took a very long time, but
as these things are wont to do.
Yes, getting I guess that's why it's called a terminal degree.
Yes.
But it took such a while.
Yeah.
And but it was a great learning experience. It's one where you literally, your mind is open to thinking very widely, contextual, having, you know, like a great analytical skills. And I actually wouldn't change it for anything.
You have now taught in the college system and the university system. A variety of subjects in the environmental and geography area and planning area. What are some of the kind of key messages that and observations that you like to share with students?
Especially when it comes to environmental matters and planning matters. Sustainability, I find, is one that I think is really good for students to wrap their head around what it actually means. And when I speak to students about the fact that sustainability has to do with thinking about what it is you're doing today and how it can affect the future generation. Like how, you know, I was asked the question, what you're doing, what you enjoy today. You know, you want, for example, your grandfather would probably say, I used to fish in Lake Ontario, and I used to do this all the time. And then now you're feeling like you're limited or restricted to doing something like that. Sustainability means that what you're enjoying today, or what it is that you know, what you're experiencing today, you would love for your children or children's children and so on and so forth to be able to experience that as well. And when you put it in that way, you know, the students think about it and say, okay, but then what does that mean? Like, what could I do so that they can enjoy what I'm enjoying now? Well, actually, what am I enjoying now? that my kids would want to enjoy, you know? And then simple things that we take for granted are things that they will end up saying, like clean air. You know, or
drinkable water.
And you're thinking, okay, back in the day, probably that wouldn't have been an issue, right?
Good point.
You know, so it turns out that if you put that in the classroom, I really love that. I really love having people think about things in a way in which they can contribute and have that, you know, feeling that all is not hopeless. There are things that they can do, and knowing that it's possible that they can contribute on an individual basis.
Well, Dr. Kay-Ann Williams, this has been brilliant. You've given us a great exposure of the challenges in your own education, the challenges in the workplace, the sense of sustainability and how crucial and important that is, not just for today, but, you know, long into the future. And I know you have many years of great academic and teaching work ahead of you. So
many years.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Bill.